I've told you in the past how I made a lot of Bitcoin back in 2016, 2018 with the rise of the altcoins with the ICOs. I want to tell you how I lost it all though. In this video, I'm going to focus on 2018 and how I kept buying the dip that kept dipping, buying into public sales and losing a lot of my money via scams. The whole point of this video is to give you two massive learning points. Knowing when to take profit and walk away, and also knowing when to stay out of the market. I can guarantee that a lot of people that are watching this video will hit home because you've probably done it yourself if you've ever had a first cycle. If this is your first cycle though, pin your ears back. But I will say something here. The last point and the last mistake that I made was probably the biggest, and I could make a video along them lines easily. So let's get into it. Let's start off in October 2017 when my altcoin journey was starting to ramp up. Let's get into it. So for a bit of context, I bought into the world of crypto back in 2016. I put in some Bitcoin from that portfolio into an altcoin portfolio. What you see basically does not cover the Bitcoin bag that I had and still do hold. However, we're going to go through why I made massive mistakes. Now, I understood the concept of dominance, but I didn't really understand the absolute ferocity of it when it goes against you, okay? This was the start. This was roughly October 2017, before things really got going, like properly got going, right? Crazy amounts. I made a decent chunk of money in the likes of, Neo and stuff like that before it was really kind of, massively valued. And I basically put a couple of £100 into this and it started to flourish into this. And I was like, oh, wow, this is pretty cool. Then I discovered ICOs, which was a bit crazy, right? Now, go into the next portfolio. This was roughly the end-ish of October where things really started to ramp up. And I know it's all in pounds, noob here, right? This is kind of the point. You do learn. So again, moving on quite nicely, and my Neo bag actually grew a little bit there. Now, this is where it starts getting a bit more exciting. This is what the effect of the ICO kind of had with Electronium. You can see there, 271,000 I got. Came out at a crazy price and went even higher. I think I sold most of mine at like 13, 14 cents. So I made a decent chunk on it considering it was a very, very low cost investment. It did very, very well. That gave me capital to then put it into other ICOs, which went a bit crazy, right? Now, this was kind of as it got roaring. A couple of ICOs on here, right? You could probably see Uterus at the top, even though the logo's wrong. Ignore that, just a glitch. But you can see my portfolio here. This was roughly mid-November time where it really ramped up. I made, yes, I know, it's crazy when you think about it, how much money I made in that time period. Moving on. This was the peak. This was like, oh my God. Now, when you now add that up in terms of how much that is worth, that's in pounds, by the way. So there's a couple of Bitcoin there. Considering Bitcoin was roughly at this point about $17,000, $18,000, you can do the maths. There's quite a lot of Bitcoin in that portfolio alone, right? Pretty scary. And that's in pounds, by the way. So I think it's about $230,000. So already you're probably thinking that's over 10 Bitcoin. It's about 15, actually. Yes, I lost about 15 Bitcoin pretty much in the grand scheme of things over this time period, which is what we're going to go through. So this was literally a week later, about 2 weeks later, maybe. Look at how much that has dropped. And it kept dropping and dropping and dropping. So that's the context done, right? Let's go into certain things. By the way, if you like this content, feel free to hit the subscribe button and like the video. It helps massively. But just to give you another bit of context, I did not do YouTube back then. I did not have much coverage on Twitter. I had a Facebook group that I made. It grew pretty significantly at that time period. And yeah, I was probably learning and failing on my feet. And, it kind of happens, right? But this is the ICO side of it. I'm a massive fan of pre-sales, public sales and stuff. I always have been. It's kind of what I like. I didn't really do it in the previous cycle because it wasn't really geared up for us as retail investors, more VCs. And I think a lot of the new projects now have learned that lesson. Makes sense. So this is ICO drops, right? Okay. This is a website I used to use back in the day. If you go to ended ICOs back in, all of these ones, there's been loads of them, and you can go back in time and you can look at like the dates and stuff, and you can go really, I don't want to go too deep on this one, but most coins that you know and love have probably had an ICO or a token generation event or whatever. Some you may have got into, some you not. So what I was doing back in the day, I was just buying ICOs. I was like, I made some money off that ICO, take my risk money out and then put it in. But that take the risk out didn't really happen that much. I was like, oh, let's just keep it going on forever. Then it got to a point when the market flipped. This is where you need to listen. The ICOs and the token generations and stuff like that, they kind of came out lower than the anticipated price, which was kind of how wet the market was. It was absolutely getting flooded with sell orders and it was absolutely crashing and burning. That is a huge, huge problem. So put it this way, right? Going back in time, a lot of these were like ICOs and like stuff I got rewarded back, but they came out proper shit, proper shit. And they just didn't climb and they got no interest and it just flatlined. So I kept putting money into them to try and rescue my bag. And it kept getting lower and lower. Problem, right? Another reason why I lost a lot of my money back in those days, especially in 2018, was a job I had. I was working for a project as a community manager. I put a lot of my BTC into that project to help it start. It didn't launch. They ran away with the money. Bit of a burn. I also was not paid for like 3 to 4 months of work. They owe me quite a lot of money, considering, right? So lost a lot of Bitcoin and ultimately failed to give me money for doing my job. That is probably why I vow, and I've always said, I will never ever work for a project ever again. And so many years later, here we are, 2024. This happened in 2018. Yeah, I'm still holding true to that. I would never work for anyone ever again in the crypto space. Nowhere. Why would I? So be mindful of that. And I know this is going to sound like probably not very niche to you, but if you make a lot of money, right, just saying, just putting this point out there, you may well find you've got more time availability and you might think, well, I can reduce my hours at work and I can do something online. Crypto, I know that. Be mindful of the job market because it's a little bit weird. There's some good stuff out there if you're a developer, obviously, but if you're like me, not really skill set in the development world or keyboards, whatever, community management and stuff like that would be kind of your forte. Just be mindful of it. Just going to put that point out there. Now, another one, and you probably will relate to this, falling for the false narratives. Now, back in 2021, not too long ago, we had the super cycle, lengthening cycles. Whoops. 2018, we had the consensus, the Coinbase event of 2018. It was by far the biggest we've ever had. Compared to the previous ones, to this, it failed massively. Now, we had Snoop Dogg and Jack Dorsey closing this one. And the idea was it was going to rescue the whole market. That was one of the whole elements of this. It was going to rescue all these amazing developments about Lightning Network and this, that, and the other. It was going to send us to, say, 50K. It didn't. We went down to 3. Just putting that point out there. Another point was the futures market. Remember the futures that came out? That literally ended the entire market. It began trade on December the 17th, which was like the end of the bull market for Bitcoin. And then that is where the altcoins had a 3-week alt season where it went fucking bananas. But that was the end of it, wasn't it? So again, we talk about false narratives. Oh, futures market's going to absolutely destroy the market. We're going to go ahead of gold and all this kind of stuff. It didn't happen. We're still kind of stuck way, way in the doldrums of gold's shadow still. Not for much longer though, I don't think. Maybe that might change. But you get the idea, right? You can see the performance here. Obviously, this is an old article, so it's great looking back in time. This is what happened. Died, right? So again, falling for the false narratives, it's just a way of going, I'm going to buy the dip that keeps on dipping. Yeah, it's a problem, right? Now, I've talked about this before on my channel, market cycles. I've said it out loud a lot recently about market cycles. That is it. Accumulation, markup, distribution, markdown, right? If you understand that, huge. I also say this in a really weird way. It's like, if influencers on YouTube, and we're going to come onto YouTube in a bit, and it's going to be the fun bit, had like an EMA on their chart, like what I should have done back in 2018. If I had like a simple EMA going, right, if it's below that one, I probably won't need to buy. I will buy key levels of support, like what I do now. If I did that back in the day, I would have saved a lot of money. Now, my point at the end of this video is going to be very, very true, and it's going to hit home hard. But understanding the cycles, and I've said it in his previous videos, you need to understand when to buy, when to sell, when not to buy, when to re-enter. That's kind of the point of this in the 4 cycle point, right? So be mindful of that one. That's a huge one. And the final one, the most obvious one, is ignoring the noise. Back in 2018, there was a lot of scams going on. BitConnect was one. I think USI Tech, There was another one, I think I've got another bit in a minute of Cloud Token or whatever it's called, right? Craziness. The noise of making returns. Now, also back in those days, you had other yield-bearing platforms, which I can't remember the names of, but BitConnect was the most obvious one, right? This one, when it collapsed, huge. And I should really watch this video in terms of what happened to those kind of people that promoted it. I'm pretty sure they all got, arrested by the SEC and stuff like that. However, ignoring the noise is massively, massively important here. You will find on a dip screaming by bear market vibes, but it's not bear market vibes. It's actually by the dip, we're going to go much higher. As I said before, false narratives, lengthening cycle. This is going to be amazing, this dip. Boom, off we go. And I fell into that massively and lost a lot of my money. That is where I lost most of my money, was buying the dip that kept on dipping. Yes, I lost money, buying into ICO, which is my risk anyways. That's totally fine. Higher risk. But buying established coins and hoping that just, I really like that. It's just dipped. Oh, buy that. As I say, putting an EMA on your chart, it will massively help you. But when you are in the circle of social media, you get kind of caught out. And this is happening right now. When you are watching the YouTube channels, it's fine right now in a bull market. But when it flips into that naughty, horrible, deathly side, you're going to get really burnt. And this is why you need to take profits and have a plan and make sure you keep that money to then know when to enter at the right time. So when we go back into this one here, Cloud Token, the scam of Cloud Token, this was a monster of a scam back in the day. This was multi-billions. I think there was another one as well. Huge amount of money that got absolutely flooded into the market. And this is what created a bit of a rise in the end of 2018 into 2019. And we kind of died after that, not too long after. So we need to be very, very careful. And the final bit, is the noise of YouTube. Now, this channel no longer posts anymore. But again, we talk about certain things. The ICO mania. Some of these are old videos, obviously. Screaming at CoinMarket was brilliant back in the day. But it's all here. It's all information that we've all seen before in the past. Certainly, we're seeing the same thing. And we talk about the markets kind of repeat themselves, and they do. They don't repeat, but they rhyme. And we're seeing the same thing. We're starting to see now a lot more bullish content going around. But people are forgetting about the obvious. How do you keep money in the market? That's what you want to do. There's a way of making it in a bull market. When it starts to get a bit too high, take a bit of profit. When it starts to turn and roll over, stay out of the market. That's kind of the whole point. So I'm trying to show you with my experience here that yes, you can lose a lot of money. And I did. I lost loads of money. And this is the point. When we talk about diminishing returns, I've talked about this before. This is like from 2021 bull market. This is a total 3/BTC pairs. So you can see where we are right now. We're kind of not looking great right now because it's Bitcoin season, right? When we look back in time and we look at 2018, it was much, much higher. So the altcoins had a much bigger bearing, and we've kind of melted, and we had this big, massive situation. We've had this massive pullback in terms of altcoins. We're going to have an alt season at some point. It will eventually go up. The time of which to get out is kind of important here for altcoins to keep Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the king, right? It's kind of obvious. When I look back and I think to myself, if I kept the amount of Bitcoin I had, and I roughly lost about 15, as I say, by being stupid, I would, it's obvious, I'd be in a much better position right now in terms of wealth. I massively would be. But the fundamental element of this is obviously I learned by those mistakes. So if you're on your first cycle or even your second cycle, you need to do two things. You need to get out when you've made a decent chunk of money and slowly, incrementally get out. But also you need to know when not to buy back in. The problem we've got is the ETF narrative of this cycle. It's a big one, right? It might mean that Bitcoin is more stable, which is probably a good vehicle for you to put your money into and then just sit and chill on there. If you want to go into USD, do it. But you need to wait for a solid confirmation that the market is going to go back into bullish phase in the future. We're already in that bullish phase. I'm thinking about the future, 6, 7, 8, however many years time, where you're going to be playing hopefully multiple cycles and you've understood the game, right? That's kind of the important part. But anyways, be mindful. The noise is huge. The opportunities that will come by will be huge. The more money you make will make you probably care less, weirdly, because it's numbers on the screen. All those factors will probably lead you to losing some money along the way. The idea is not to lose too much. So if you enjoyed that video, I hope you did. Please do leave a like and subscribe and all kinds of stuff. I am reopening my Patreon, by the way. However, video coming up on the screen here of how I kind of did make a lot of money through multiple cycles.